Hello, I'm Doug Brown, Executive Director of the Connecticut Bar Association and the CT Bar Institute. Welcome to this episode of BarChat. I am very pleased to have with us today the immediate past president of the Connecticut Bar Association and a principal in the law firm of Clendenen and Shea in New Haven, Connecticut, Bill Clendenen. Welcome, Bill.
Hi, Doug. Nice to see you. How are you today?
Nice to see you. I'm so happy to have you here. Over the time we worked together, I learned so much about your story and about how you've been a champion for access to civil justice for your whole career. And then when you're president, the legislature passes the law about civil Gideon, and you just got done with the task force on that. Why don't you tell me about how that came about and your role in it?
Well, it's really exciting times, Doug, as you know, because you were part of it. But the Connecticut Bar Association, as part of its constitution, is committed to providing access to the economically disadvantaged,
yes,
whether it's through voluntary pro bono, legislative initiatives, or whatever. And the leadership focused on how do we make it more meaningful for the people of Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And we worked on this concept called civil Gideon, a famous case of Gideon versus Wainwright,
yes,
that guarantees a lawyer in criminal proceedings, but there's no guarantee of a lawyer in civil proceedings. And the consequences for the people of Connecticut can be horrible. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Someone is evicted from their house, and the children end up going to a homeless shelter. And then the children go into foster care. Their education suffers, so you have problems in the education system. You have increased police activity frequently. So you're talking about a horrible human cost just because that person didn't have access to a lawyer in the eviction proceedings. And let's assume the place was rat infested, so they had a full defense, so they didn't have to be evicted. So what we looked at as part of the CBA is the human cost and how that could be met.
Right.
Fast forward to 2016, the General Assembly decided that it would create a legislative task force to study improving access to justice for the people of Connecticut.
Right.
And so this task force was created to study that with some very, very terrific people on the task force.
Just amazing people. You had the opportunity to co-chair that.
Well, I co-chaired it with Tim Fisher, who, as you know, is the dean of the University of Connecticut Law School. We never would have gotten that far without the support of our Chief Justice, Chase Rogers. You may remember at the annual meeting 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
She gave this impassioned plea that we get civil Gideon, we get access to justice. So the judicial branch was very supportive. The law schools were supportive, the legal aid providers, and all sorts of stakeholders in government and in private organizations.
So this was a really big task and an important task for the task force. And you did amazing work in a very short period of time, right? I mean, you got done just this last December.
Well, Tim Fisher and I took a challenge. We had 6 months. And we were told that we could get an extension, but we decided that it was too important.
Right.
So we rode herd on the task force members. And we came out with a report, and it was unanimous. And we had legislators on there, and they all signed off on it. And the recommendations are important. I won't go through all of them because it's on our website, and members can get access to the report there.
Yep, we have a whole resource page on it.
But one of the important recommendations is, and with the approval of our Attorney General, George Jepson, who's quite a good fellow, that we take some of the monies that he recovers from the evildoers, the big stock frauds and all of that, and dedicate that money some of that money to increasing access to justice. The judges on our task force explained, for example, how much of a problem they have with civil restraining orders. You may remember that tragedy a couple of years ago
in Middletown.
In Middletown, Adam Moreno was thrown off the bridge, Aragoni Bridge, and died. And there were issues about whether the mother could have gotten a restraining order or not. And what ended up, the judge was blamed, and he shouldn't have been. But the real problem, and I read it very carefully, was the lack of access to justice.
Yes.
If she had had the right to a lawyer to explain her problem, it might have been different. And that resonated with the task force members, it resonated with the judges, and it's resonated with our state legislators. So that's one of the very important recommendations, that counsel be provided in that area, that counsel be provided in other family areas, matters, and in evictions. And an area that we really focused on was the whole problem with deportation.
Yes.
While it's a federal problem, the families are being disrupted in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And so we try to focus and prioritize, given the fiscal issues that we have with the state, and try to explain to the General Assembly what's the most important. It's not that the other issues aren't important, but what's the most important? What do you need to focus on?
So it sounds like the task force report sets up, a roadmap on this issue of sorts, right? Going forward on what can be done?
There is a roadmap, and there are concrete suggestions on how to do various things. But there are also suggestions on how to make the bureaucracy more user-friendly for the citizens, so you really don't even get to the need for a lawyer because it's explained to you.
Oh.
So there are practical suggestions like that we hope that they'll adopt. That really don't cost any money. There's some that can cost money, but it was the consensus of the task force that money shouldn't be the only issue, because the overwhelming human need, the deprivation, the lack of meaningful access to justice is just so important that there's got to be a commitment to it. We felt.
Absolutely. And I know that so many of our Connecticut Bar Association members are also committed to this. What could they do, an individual lawyer, to support the recommendations of the task force to make some of these things real as an individual lawyer?
Well, to the extent that they can, they should be providing pro bono services.
Yes, of course.
But they need to contact their elected representatives. They need to talk to them. Because they'll have coffee with them, they'll play tennis with them, and just explain that it's a core value of the Connecticut Bar Association. One of the proudest things I have of being a member is to be able to help less fortunate people, the economically disadvantaged in Connecticut. We have a wonderful life being lawyers. It's hard, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, we're very lucky.
But we have an obligation, I think, to think about the people who don't have access.
Yes.
They walk in, you see the long lines in some of the courthouses. People don't understand what their rights are, and frequently they have rights that aren't being enforced because of a lack of a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I think that our members can and should explain to the representatives why it's important. And the data that we looked at is that if you start providing lawyers in these situations, not only do you limit the human tragedy, but you end up saving millions of dollars for taxpayers. The data is becoming clear that if you provide a lawyer, it might cost $1,000 in an eviction proceeding, and the tenant isn't evicted, you'll save tens of thousands of dollars in those related costs, like foster care, education, homeless shelters, all of that. So the data is there, and one of the recommendations we made is when these programs are instituted, that studies be mandated so that we can demonstrate that there are those savings.
To show the payback on the
But I think this is something that the bar has worked on hard, the Connecticut Bar Association has supported, and that it should be very proud of.
I agree, and I would encourage all of our members to take a time to look at the report, as you said, call their legislature, and try to make a difference in their own community, even a small difference. If our nearly 10,000 members, each one does a little something, then we can start to make a much bigger impact.
Well, it's also good for the people of Connecticut.
Yes,
and that's the important thing.
It absolutely is. So thank you so much for all of your work on this important task force and for being here on BarChat.
Okay.
Until next time, I'm Doug Brown. Take care. BarChat is a production of the Connecticut Bar Association and the CT Bar Institute as a service to our members. We invite you to join our community and get connected, be successful, and make a difference. Learn more at ctbar.org.